Well, aren't you glad you're free? From all those damnable, inhibiting, fearful traditions and conventions and bondage of the old system. So-called Christianity. Damnable churchianity. God is free. And where the Spirit of the Lord is, there is liberty. Praise God. I'm not ashamed of the body God gave me, and I hope you're not either. We just have to be careful and watch out about the people who are ashamed because of their systematic indoctrination and their system reflexes and their system brainwashing, which has made them a damnable creature of the system. Some of you are still having a hard time getting over it. Some of these things crop up in me every once in a while. I revert to that thought pattern, and I have a reaction that was conditioned by the system. Every now and then something happens, little, tiny things. I was taught that this is the way you're supposed to do it. It took me years to find out that the Bible didn't say so. And I made a whole list of the traditions and conventions and customs of the church that I couldn't find a word of Scripture to substantiate. Nothing but the traditions of men by which they had made the law of God of none effect. Jesus said so.
Keep It Real is a weekly podcast where we present our theories of the subjects we cover based on our interest and research. Some material may be graphic and disturbing, so proceed with caution.
We made some new pals over at Caskets and Cocktails. It's a father-daughter duo. He owns a bunch of cemeteries around the United States, and they tell tales of what goes on before and after burials. And we're actually right now going to let you hear a little bit from them about what they do over there.
Yeah. Hey, I'm Katie Leverett.
I'm Danny Faulkner. I'm her daddy.
And this is Caskets and Cocktails.
I've been in the cemetery business for over 35 years, and everything that happens in a cemetery.
That is so true. And one of the reasons why we started this podcast is so that we can answer all of your crazy questions about the industry and hear some of Mr. Danny's hilarious stories that go along with them.
Well, all of the things that happen just sound funny, but they really happen.
You won't believe some of the stories this guy has. And with that, we love Keep It Real podcast, and so they were wanting to ask us what keeps us up at night. So for me, I get really freaked out by space movies. I don't know why. Like, I'm scared I'm gonna get stuck in space.
Like Star Wars or something?
No, more like that George Clooney one where he shoots out and is in the middle of space all by himself. That freaks me out. What keeps you up at night?
Sardines and sauerkraut. Yeah, that stuff will keep me up all night.
Well, I guess when you're working in death care all day, not a whole lot scares you, right, Daddy?
No, not really. Not really. I mean, it's not the dead ones that you need to be scared of. It's the live ones you need to be scared of.
Well, guys, I hope you enjoyed this episode of Keep It Real, but we also hope that you tune in and subscribe to Caskets and Cocktails. We have a lot of fun. We drink a couple of cocktails.
Right. We do our job. We want you to do your job.
That's right. So be sure to hit subscribe today to Caskets on Cocktails. And thank y'all so much for having us on Keep It Real.
Yeah, thanks a lot. We enjoy your show.
Thanks, Katie and Dan. Caskets and Cocktails is such a unique podcast, and both Shai and I highly recommend that you head over there and subscribe now. I guarantee you're going to laugh and you're going to learn a little bit more about the death care industry. Hey, everybody.
Hey, y'all.
It's Ashley.
It's Shy.
You're listening to Creep It Real, and we're going to really try to get Shy's computer to get on board with us recording this morning.
If anybody wants to buy me a new computer, that'd be rad.
We would love you. Just buy our new computer. It's not much to ask, I would say.
I don't think so.
So today we are covering our very first cult, my very first cult, and it's Children of God. And it goes by a million other names, but I think for the most part we'll call it Children of God.
Mm-hmm.
Yep, and it's disturbing as hell. So buckle your seats and let's get going because it's very disturbing. I mean, as many times as I've heard this information, I truly cannot be anything but absolutely horrified whenever I read it. I'm like, are you kidding me? I've heard it before, but I don't even, it's like I've never, it's just totally, like you said a minute ago on our first go round that, whatever you said.
It's a doozy.
Yeah.
It's definitely one of those instances where the truth is stranger than fiction.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Just, okay, here we go. Hold on to your butts, everybody. So, the man who created the Children of God cult was named David Berg, and he was born in Oakland, California in 1919. So, this cult was formed in the late 60s, and still, when I read 1919, I was like, good Lord, this man was old.
Yeah, he's old and ugly, creepy.
Dead now, but he was absolutely gross as can be. So he was the youngest of three brothers. He was born to Virginia Brant Berg and Hammer Emanuel Berg. Sorry, everybody. Hammer is what we decided to call it.
Yeah.
We aren't really sure. It's spelled Hjalmer, so that's like kind of a foreign name to me. But his father had been kind of a cool guy for whenever he got married to Virginia, and Virginia's father was a preacher who converted him to whatever their religion really is. They were evangelist Christians.
Yeah, Christian evangelists.
Yes, and later in life, Berg said that the drastic change from a good-looking, drinking, wild dancing, party-going man to what he became after his conversion was too drastic for his mother to bear, as he was nothing like the man that she had married. And I think from that point, she kind of became the head of the household, and she was a bit overbearing and bossy, and I think his father was just kind of a second class. It's not kind of like a second class citizen in the house, it seemed. Sort of.
Well, so speaking of his mother, she became a pretty prominent presence in his life in terms of like the way she preached and proselytized and had an influence on her followers as well. At times, he would travel with her during her ministries and witness her preaching to what I guess you could call masses. And I think this had a lot of influence on how he looked at himself and his mother as well. When you're preaching in front of a crowd of people and they're just in awe of you, hanging on every word, it's got to give you kind of a God complex, you know?
Yeah, for sure. By Berg's own account, he said that he was a very lonely boy because when he was really young, his mother was out traveling with her ministry. And he described himself as a bookworm who preferred to retreat into the world of study of other times and places rather than live in the harsh, cruel world around him, which, as we go along in the story, that starts to really parallel what he kind of teaches his followers in the Children of God cult. The household which he grew up in was one of sexual repression, and punitively so, meaning that his mother punished him kind of harshly and physically for exploring his sexuality, I might say, but he was a kind of compulsive masturbator.
Right. This actually stems from an incident that had happened when he was about 3 years old. His babysitter had been molesting him, unbeknownst to his mother, until one day she actually caught her in the act of it. She found it really strange that the babysitter really thought nothing of it and was like, whatever lady. Well, she ended up getting fired, and his mother thought that he was too young to have him really remember it and have effect on his adult life. But any sort
he
of
seems to.
right, and I was gonna like, so one thing that comes from sexual abuse a lot of times is sexual fixation, chronic masturbation, a really skewed view on what a healthy sex life is, sexual morals and whatnot, and we will see that play out. It absolutely had to have had an effect on him.
Right. He actually used this example in one of his letters that he wrote his followers, and as an example of how he turned out like just fine.
Right.
He said, look at me. I don't think it did any harm. And I think we can all agree as we go along here that it absolutely created a sexual predator and pretty much a monster when it came to the cult. And the children in the cult and the women in the cult, everything. It was very detrimental to their well-being, I would say. Yeah, like one time his mom even threatened to cut his penis off with a knife and a cutting board. And she also, on one occasion, humiliated him for masturbating in front of his entire family, which is something that he never forgave her for. Clearly, that was a poor way of handling the situation and was deeply traumatizing for him, probably just as much as the abuse that he endured himself, I would say. And it obviously, like Shai just said, shaped the way that he viewed sex and went forward as an adult. So I don't know if you read that at the age of 7 that he and his cousin began to sexually experiment with each other.
No.
Yes. So he says the first time it happened, they kind of, were exploring each other's bodies or something on the couch, and at some point they realized that his uncle had been watching them the whole time.
Oh, wow.
He says that they eventually had intercourse with each other on multiple occasions. So that's when they were both 7, and obviously that's very, very young for that to be happening. And typically you would only see that with somebody that may have been abused prior to this.
Right.
At that age, at least. So he also experienced extreme physical punishment at the hands of his father, which is something that he wrote about in his letters to his followers. But he also felt that it was necessary and just, and that he completely needed it to be able to behave properly. Which, everybody's going to have their different views about corporal punishment, but I think the overwhelming majority of like extreme corporal punishment data about that is that it's harmful for a child's brain development. And
absolutely.
Yeah. So, as much, but he will later carry this on into the cult as well, where he recommends that they harshly punish children for stuff that I was like, what the heck are you even talking about right now? But we'll get into that. So like Shai said, he joined his mom traveling as her assistant while she traveled evangelizing. And if evangelizing is a word, I'm making it one if it's not.
I think it's a word, yeah.
Okay.
Well, so, his parents, they were very intense, and they even had been kicked out of the ministry that they were in because they were talking about her abilities for divine healing.
Right.
Which was very contrary to the church doctrine.
Mm-hmm.
So they joined a new denomination, the Christian and Ministry Alliance, and this was shortly before David's birth. So they were very zealous and really thought a lot of themselves, especially Virginia.
Right. I actually read that she had said that she was essentially an invalid for 3 to 5 years at some point.
Yeah, she was on the brink of death for a while.
Yes.
Yeah.
Supposedly, and that she healed herself.
Yeah.
And then she used that as a way to, in her ministry, to make people think that she had these divine powers. And It was later obviously found out that she lied about that. So, shockingly enough.
Weird.
Yeah. So
I was going to mention that he became a minister in the Christian Missionary Alliance too as well. But he was eventually expelled from the organization because at the age of 23, he was having and alleged sexual relationship with a 17-year-old church employee.
Yeah, so his oldest daughter, has talked about this and said that that is absolutely the reason why they expelled him.
Right.
And I obviously wouldn't put it past him, but it was also claimed that, he claimed that it was because of his support for greater racial diversity among the congregation. But I am going to talk about a few things in a little while where that does not really align with the way he thought about the world. So, and obviously we know he's a sexual predator. So I have a feeling that the sex part is probably correct. And he does kind of live in an imaginary world that he's created for himself. So I'm sure for him, he thought, he was going to say whatever the reason was is not the actual reason. Yeah. So while he was getting into this, being a pastor, I think he had been kind of moved around from different churches. And then he married this woman, Jane Miller. They had 4 children, and it was a kind of a crap marriage from the start. Apparently on their honeymoon, he realized that she was sexually repressed, even more so than he may have been, and had later stated that her religious upbringing made her uptight and tied up like an ox, which he's a charmer with his words about women and ideas, so that doesn't surprise me.
It's kind of funny because there's passages in the Bible, and it's one of Kevin's favorites, that describe women as like, what is it? Something about being like a lovely mountain goat or something. And I'm like, I'm cool with it.
Oh, sure. I've never thought of myself as a mountain goat, but okay. So after he got kicked out, he was resentful and angry about this, and he just traveled around from different churches in different areas until his mother persuaded him to come to California to preach to hippies at this certain coffee house, and he did. And it was there that he started to kind of lay the groundwork for the Children of God cult, because for some reason he was finally successful with this particular group. It was kind of a group of hippies, and he just really resonated with them, I suppose. So up until this point, his career was really his life and his career really were one of frustration and failure. And his wife, Jane Miller, was a harsh critic of him and ridiculed him all the time, according to him, just like his mother did. So he felt kind of beaten down by both of them, and I'm sure he was just an utter delight. Old David Berg sure seemed to have a type at this point, which was the domineering person that put him down. So it was about 1968 when he formed the organization Teens for Christ in Huntington Beach, California, where that coffee shop was. And it was around this time that the crime rates were raising, the Manson family murders were taking place, and it was the perfect situation for him to come in to this group of hippies and kind of like save the day with this organization. It was obviously later changed to Children of God. Like I said, we'll refer to it probably as that most of the time. But it was later changed to the Family of Love and then the Family International. There's about 7 different names that they wanted to be called. And I think it's really just because they were trying to elude.
Well, in the Bible, when someone changes from their old ways into more Christian-like, they often got a new name.
Okay.
So like Paul, the Apostle Paul was King Saul, I believe, who had murdered and persecuted Christians. So
okay. So it was just kind of like
facts.
Okay, there you go, laying them down. Evolution of the cult itself.
Right.
So
because his whole thing was that he wanted everybody to follow Christ as closely as possible, but we come to know it is like the furthest thing away from Jesus. So
he's a little overboard, and he starts to take things into his own interpretations, which I mean, I guess you could say that about a lot of people, but this is to a point that's dangerous. So at this time that he was successfully proselytizing to these hippies in California, his overbearing mother died, which is kind of what opened up this situation and allowed his repressed sexuality to manifest in the form of these pretty creative social mores for his cult. And at a memorial for his mother, where all of her friends had gathered, he just exploded with his new message of, it was damn the system, damn the church, damn everything that had anything to do with his upbringing, essentially. So it was like, she's dead, she's out of here, I'm now going to start anew with what God really wants us to be doing.
Right.
Which unfortunately for everybody in the cult, meant that the once repressed Berg became this unbridled sexual being, and the unbridled sexuality became the basis of his cult's ideology. It was the complete opposite of the repressive ideas that he was raised with. So with the death of his mother came the death of his sexual guilt that he had held on to for so long.
Right.
So instead of using this opportunity to advance his mental health, like, because he obviously had some trauma that he needed to work through,
Right.
and instead of providing a healthy model for his followers, he formed incredibly destructive religious tenets for his organization. He began molesting his daughters, his granddaughters, and even made advances on his daughter-in-law. He denounced what he called so-called incest, saying that there was incest throughout the Bible, and even condemned family members in his letters to his followers who did not want to, quote, lie with him in the bed of love. Which, I mean, yeah. I mean, I don't really know what to say about that other than...
his gross.
Yeah, it leaves me speechless to think that he's literally condemning his own child for not wanting to have sex with him. Like, okay.
Well, he ended up telling his oldest daughter, too, who he was having a sexual relationship with, that his wife wasn't fulfilling his sexual needs, so that's where she needed to step in, and it was like a heavenly,
oh my God,
like privilege for her to be doing this. Yeah, so...
Which, obviously, that's so wrong and traumatic for her. And I'm just going to be really superficial here and say he's the nastiest MF I've ever seen. And on top of the fact that it's your father who's totally crossing all sorts of boundaries with you, he's also revolting.
Right.
So, I mean, in every way possible. So in 1969... he began an affair with Maria, who he would later take on as his new wife. It was, he said, per God's instruction, as a symbol of his establishment of the new church. So kind of like you just said, you know, a new name, a new wife. He just thought everything needed to be transformed and to represent his new ministry, I suppose.
And he was like super against traditional Christian teachings too. His main goal was to kind of denounce those teachings because he had like the actual interpretation of the scriptures.
Right. Like he called it like system church or whatever, system Christianity.
Yeah.
Which we'll find out in a little while, like his whole system thing. He just, you know, he's railing against the system, which I can understand, but you know, not to this degree. But that essentially gave him permission to abandon his previous wife, who he saw as like a closed up old biddy, essentially, and move on with this Maria, who she will be his main wife throughout the story. He'll take on other women, lovers and whatnot, but he will always hold that spot for her as his, like, quote unquote main wife. So, like many cult leaders, Berg was an enigmatic and compelling orator, so he really, it's kind of like Jim Jones, where he just, the way he talked and the confidence that he spoke about everything he was saying really compelled people and made them feel confident that what he was saying was the truth.
Right. Because he is preying on people that feel lost and alone and like the world has nothing to offer.
Right.
They have like a need for a family, for acceptance.
Yeah. Just, you know, they saw this cult as their new family and all they needed. They saw everybody that was in it as happy and loving life, and you know, it was just easy to get a lot of new people in the cult, especially because they were all kind of young and beautiful, they said. So it was just, everybody was young and beautiful and looked to be just having the greatest time in the whole world, and come join us because you will too, and we'll feed you and clothe you. But him being so enigmatic was how he was able to, as a unabashed sexual predator, convince his followers to, like, for example, film orgies and send the tapes to him. Because, as he said, Jesus was a man who liked sex, therefore it was nothing to be ashamed of. And we'll get into, like, how depraved they really get with the sex stuff. But, you know, just that in itself, he's just essentially I mean, I don't know how others say it, but tricking these people into having sex, filming it, and sending it to him so that he can get off on it. Like, how in the hell did this go on?
That's what blows my mind is I get being lonely and kind of lost in this world. And honestly, how would these people even have survived in today's chaos and just abundance of BS? But what part of you is like, I'm so lonely that sending this dude basically amateur porn films is my way to get into heaven, right?
Yeah.
Like, okay.
Oh, gosh. He really appealed to a particular demographic of Christians who also had hippie, anti-establishment, free love mindsets. And that was a really big thing at the time. There was a sociologist, Dr. Thomas Robbins. He said that Berg's leadership was based off of charismatic authority, which is a concept about leadership that was developed by the German sociologist Max Weber. I don't know, Weber, I'll say that. It involves a type of organization or a type of leadership in which authority derives from the charisma of the leader. This stands in contrast to the other types of authority, which are legal authority and traditional authority. So he was just, like we said already, super charismatic. That was how he was able to trick all these people. I mean, trick sounds like a silly word to use, but I mean, essentially they were tricked.
It's true. Yeah.
Okay.
He was huge into prophecies. And so Berg predicted several apocalyptic events. And one of the big things about people that do this is they like never happen, right?
Right.
He said that the comet Kotek, I don't know, it's like Russian, would wreak havoc and would just like be ultimate destruction. And he was also one of the ones that predicted that California would just fall off the United States and into the ocean. And that, so the Great Tribulation would begin in 1989, and that the second coming of Jesus himself would happen in 1993.
Right.
And we all know this never happened.
Yeah.
So
he had tens of thousands of young, like hippie people around the U.S. and Europe that joined the System of God, Children of God cult. You know, they thought that this cult represented peace, love, freedom, and that gave them a purpose, which was to like save the world, which,
right.
You know, they weren't doing anything really to better anyone else's lives at all other than his. So he wrote these newsletters that he called Mo letters, and he taped sermons, and he encouraged his followers to read those Mo letters and listen to the sermons like all the time. In these things that he wrote and taped, he gave his disciples guidance and advice about life and became a role model, almost like a parent-like figure. Most of his writings described evils of the quote-unquote system world, which was government, corporations, and people with jobs. So for some reason, he vilified people that worked. I'm really not sure how he came about thinking that way, but
he was saying that like the rest of the world was like Christian socialism, and everything was about money and material things, and that was the absolute opposite of what Jesus Christ, and everybody needed to live these insanely modest lives, sell their belongings, and just like, yeah.
And that carried over from his upbringing, because his parents really relied on donations from their parishioners, etc., to survive. So his parents had always preached frugality. But I mean, it's funny because even though he says this stuff, the main goal of this entire cult was to make money. I mean, you know, it's like you're doing the same exact thing. He published over 3,000 of these Mo letters, and some of them were classified for disciples only, which he noted as DO. Some were some disciples and friends only, which were DFO, and others were for the general public. And some were BAR, which was burn after reading, because the contents he knew were so inflammatory for outside society that he would perhaps, you know, get in some serious trouble if anyone else read them. He's a freaking psychopath. Okay, so he claimed to be a prophet, like Shai said, and he said that God personally hand-delivered his messages to him, which, like she said, foretelling the end of the world, which is I think that's kind of an old trope with any of these cults. It's like the end of the world is coming. And, he used natural disasters, war, global financial crises, and a threat of nuclear war as proof of this stuff. But like, if you go back throughout history, anybody can do that at any point in time. There's always war. There's always natural disasters. Of course, there are things that, may be getting worse at this point, but like, global warming and whatnot. But, that might be another conversation altogether. So he said that the devil already had control of Europe and America, but that system people, everybody that's not in the church, had no idea, which is why they laughed at the cult and thought that they were crazy, but that was because they were the stupid ones. And it's like, yeah, that's it. that's what's going on here. He promised his followers that when the end times came, that they would be God's chosen warriors in a battle of Armageddon. Like Shai said, it would begin in 1993, that floods and earthquakes would ravage the world and deep darkness would cover the earth, and he called this the Great Tribulation. He also said that they would be fighting the Antichrist in the skies by God's side, and that they would die and then go to heaven. And like, this was taught to like little kids, and I read an account of this one little girl who was saying that she was just, they would teach this end times nightmarish scenario to them and tell them, you're going to fight, you're going to be given special powers, but you're going to die. And like, these little kids would just obsess about the fact that they were going to die and what it was going to do to them, and if it was going to hurt, and if the people that killed them were going to feel bad. And it was just all this stuff. They're like, I'm like, that has got to be traumatizing to be constantly.
So essentially, they weren't allowed to be children. They were just loaded up with all this like very scary adult false teaching type stuff.
Right. And oh God, all the other, we'll get into more of the stuff that they had to endure, but like, I mean, it is truly horrifying. So Berg claimed that he had several spirit helpers that possessed his body and handed down God's prophecies. And he did not allow anybody to drink alcohol. It was strictly forbidden, but he himself was an admitted alcoholic. And so he had this one spirit helper, quote unquote spirit helper, named Abraham, who he said was the ancient gypsy king that demanded wine before revealing any prophecies. So of course, yeah, do what you will, he can do whatever he wants, but nobody else can do these things. It's ridiculous.
Right.
Abraham stated in one of these Mo letters that he knows everything and will tell you everything you need to know if only he is given more wine. I'm like, you're so weird, dude. I just do not even understand. Okay, so in his Mo letters, he was generally depicted in cartoon form with long hair in a robe, and like some of them that I've seen, he's very tan and has a six-pack, and it was far from the case in reality.
Well, it's kind of interesting because he was like big on secrecy, so a lot of the photos that he was in of the group or the family or whatever, people would like draw over his face and make him look like a lion.
Yeah, they did like a cartoon lion's head on him all the time.
Yeah.
He said that this was to conceal his identity from the Antichrist, because if the Antichrist knew who he was, it would risk his safety. Mm-hmm. In reality, it was because he was a skeevy, child molesting pervert that wrote about things that were illegal and gross and would be illegal by what he called systemites standards. So that's what he called everybody out in the outside world, outside of the cult, where they were called systemites, which I mean makes sense if he's talking about the system all the time, railing against the system. Like I said, many of those letters came with instructions to burn after reading, if that tells you anything about the content. And, considering the ones that we have seen, and I mean, I'll post some pictures that I have, like, of some of the illustrations, but honestly, I'm not even sure. I would have to, I think, censor them, because I'm not even sure that I would be allowed to post them on social media. I'm not even positive. They are super graphic, and
they are not safe for work.
Yeah, they definitely are not safe for work. And I mean, it's so weird, but like, it's kind of it gives you a really good idea about what was going on. And it's just insane to me that this is happening. But that said, if those are the ones that we have seen, what are the ones that we haven't, that he instructed everybody to burn after reading? I mean, I wonder if any of those got out to the public at all. I don't know. In his letters and otherwise, he was openly anti-Semitic, saying that Jews killed Jesus and persecuted Christians in the world. And he also attacked black people as he believed that the curse of Ham applied to them, which I didn't know anything about this. So the curse of Ham is the curse upon Canaan, Ham's son, that was imposed by biblical patriarch Noah. The curse occurs in the book of Genesis and concerns Noah's drunkenness and the accompanying shameful act perpetrated by his son Ham, the father of Canaan. The controversies raised by the story regarding the nature of Ham's transgression and the question of why Noah cursed Canaan when Ham had sinned have been debated for over 2,000 years, and the story's original purpose may have been to justify the subjection of the Canaanite people to the Israelites, but in later centuries, the narrative was interpreted by some Christians, Muslims, and Jews as an explanation for black skin as well as slavery. Nevertheless, most Christians, Muslims, and Jews now disagree with such interpretation because in the biblical text, Ham himself is not cursed and race or skin color is never mentioned. So that was a bit of a long-winded explanation. But
So essentially he thought black people were like the Antichrist, like the bringing of the Antichrist.
he thought that they were being used by the Antichrists, like operatives, I
Okay.
guess. And so essentially, yes, they were working for the Antichrist and that they had been cursed, and that's why they had dark skin and slavery. So he's an asshole, on top of being a total creep. Yeah, exactly. He said that that black people were being used by the Antichrist to bring about the new world order.
Okay.
Yeah. So cool.
Cool.
Yeah, exactly. This is a little bit of a random thing that I added here. I don't think I knew where to put it, but it was stated that Berg was openly regretful about what his one regret in life was, which was that he never actually had sex with his mother.
So
I don't know if that's because in his weirdo mind that he thought that would have mended their relationship, and like, I don't know.
I have no idea. I mean, he saw her as like a divine prophet, some sacred lady. So,
Ugh, God. Come on. Like, God, if there's anything that makes me ill, it's hearing that kind of crap. But it'll get worse, actually, now that I say that. So he had all of these followers all over the world, and they had these communes all over Europe and in other countries in America. They were like filled to the brim with people. So there was like,
right. By like 1977, they had over 130 communes all over the world.
I mean, and they would live several to a room in these large groups. All the money that they earned in the entire household was collected at the end of the month, and 50% went to food, heating, and clothes. The other half went to Berg's household. So they were really subsisting off of hardly anything. And for some reason, even though he supposedly is preaching that money is the root of evil and don't be driven by money, he himself was getting half of what every single commune household took in over the month. Like,
right.
Cool, dude. I mean, I don't know. I don't know how he ever justified that, or I guess they didn't care. They just were happy to give him that money. The missionaries themselves were generally very attractive young people. They were happy. They seemed to love life. And like we said, it made it easy to convince others to join. So there were new recruits that were coming all the time, which only meant that there were more mouths to feed. And if supplies ran low, they were told to pray. And if nothing in the situation changed, meaning that they didn't have enough food, they were told that they just didn't pray hard enough. So there was this one story. I was like, are you freaking kidding me right now? At one of the communes in Thailand, rations were incredibly low, and members were subsisting off of boiled rice and mangoes, and they typically had maggots in them. One member was heavily pregnant, but clearly undernourished and looked horribly sick, and she was sent on a fundraising trip in the middle of summer and began to miscarry in the middle of the street. They rushed her to a dirty hospital, and she delivered a stillborn baby. And when she arrived back to the house, I know, that sounds terrible enough. And then when she arrived back to the house, she was white-faced, still ill. The members told her to, quote-unquote, get the victory, which was their term for overcoming any and all adversity. I would like to punch you all in the throat. You'll hear that a million times when you read about this. All these horrible things happen, and everyone is just told, get the victory. Oh, okay.
Right.
And, they were kind of denied health care for the great majority of the time, It's crazy.
Well, the fact that she was extremely malnourished, too, and probably didn't receive any pre-postnatal medical care.
Yeah. I was wondering, did this lady even survive? You know,
Poor lady.
we don't even know, really.
Right.
They were encouraged to be free and
Right.
live without inhibition. Women wore long flowy skirts and translucent tops, and they were prohibited from wearing bras. I'm talking, it was against the rules. And now I have to say, I can't necessarily be against this. To me, I'm like, oh yeah, but that's a little
Right.
This was something that allowed David Berg himself to randomly grab any woman he wanted's breasts to make sure that they were following the rules, he said. So cool again.
That just, oh my God, I can't even with this dude.
He is just extremely sexually predatory. Like, you know?
Right. They were very anti-government too. Like the government was
Yeah.
seen as evil and they wanted to live as self-sufficiently as possible, but apparently they couldn't.
They didn't have any farming. You know, there wasn't like they were able to
Right.
provide themselves with a great amount of nutrition or anything. They lived off pretty much like donation food. They were all expected to cut off all ties from their biological families to devote themselves to the group. And like I said a minute ago, there was a strict no drinking and no drug policy, as they were told that they were going to get high on Jesus and that's it. Not quite the same, but I mean, I guess that's debatable depending on who you ask. New recruits were expected to spend several hours doing Bible study, and in the day they would attend inspiration classes where they would sing, dance, and have group hugs that they called love bombing. I was wondering if that was it more than that?
I think it's code for group orgies.
Yeah.
Like, okay, the word orgy implies it's a group, but anyway.
So on the weekends, they went out with experienced members to make money selling flyers and begging for donations. They would go on evangelical road trips where they were encouraged to, quote unquote, live by faith, which meant that there was no spending of any money. They only could attempt to solicit free meals and lodging from people. So it said that sometimes they would not eat, or they would end up huddled together in sleeping bags in somebody's basement or on the street, or...
Well, it's interesting because David lived separate from his people most of the time too. Like he didn't sleep in this pile of people. He had his own quarters or house or...
No, he's really special. Of course, he gets his own place. He gets to do everything that they can't do because that's what happens. They had to bring any funds that they raised back to the group, and a maximum of 10% of those funds was used for food if they just absolutely could not get somebody to donate them food.
Right.
So it was really restrictive, and I mean, they were essentially like starving most of the time and just in terrible conditions. But honestly, from what I read at the time, they seemed just happy as shit to be doing this.
Maybe they were just delusional from the lack of food.
There was probably a lot of factors, you know, they were cut off from anybody else. They're not eating, they're being exposed to hypersexual activity when I don't think hardly anybody is raised that way, to think it's okay to have sex in front of everybody and have sex with everybody. And so actually, you know, up until this point, the rules actually dictated that there was no sex among members at all. I just need to say that because we never really I've been talking about all this crazy sex, and it really hasn't gotten to that point yet. So by the mid-70s, his status had risen so highly among its members that they began to call him Moses David, King David, or Father David. And it was at this point that the cult's rules on sex were eased up a bit, and threesomes and consensual swinging were allowed. So the higher-ups in the church would match women, which were essentially other men's wives, for what they called sharing, and it's pretty self-explanatory. You were essentially sleeping with other people's spouses.
Who else did this? Was it, dang it. This happens a lot in these cults.
Well, I think...
So it's hard.
I know, it's hard to keep them all straight. I don't think they did that at Jonestown.
No. I want to say this is, who's the big Mormon dude?
God, what is his name?
Something King? Is it something King?
Joseph?
No.
Oh, hell.
Anyway, I swear, like, he started picking and choosing what women married what men.
Yeah.
You know, if you were married to this one woman, he could be like, no more.
Yeah.
She's going to so-and-so. So.
Yeah. And he definitely does that here. And I think a lot of it is to kind of break up that close bond that a husband and wife would have. Because, you know, that to them was not what God wanted. They wanted everybody to be equal.
Well, that's what they did, is they preached family and closeness, but the biggest way to keep these people following you was to tear apart the family dynamic.
Yeah, exactly. If anyone didn't readily go along with these sharing situations, they were seen as unspiritual, or what they called a backslider, which is a great Toady song, but not so great when you're part of the cult. It made it hard for them to say no in general. So it was kind of like, even if they didn't want to be taking part in this, they had to do it, or else they were seen as somebody that doesn't really follow God like they need to be.
Right.
Even pregnant women were expected to share at up to 8 months pregnant.
Yeah, gonna vomit.
I know, it's disgusting. So he himself, like I said, rotated a harem of lovers in and out of his household while he maintained his main wife, Maria. He routinely ignored marriage bonds when he wanted access to certain women. His quote was, "God will have no other gods above him, not even the sanctity of the marriage God." So the family marriage puts the whole family first, which is what he was saying. The family marriage with everybody. Everybody is just married to each other. This also included members' children, as they were to have no special favoritism for their own flesh and blood. They said that this was selfish and not what God was about. So you were raised by strangers, or, family members, but
Right.
They were strangers, and a lot of them were horrible people. So it just opened up all these doors for your parents to not really be as involved in your upbringing as they should be, and protecting you like they should be. He declared the age of 12 to be the age children reached full adult maturity. So basically, he was setting the framework for these young girls to be forced into sex and prostitution. It was essentially so that he could begin to, marry and have relations with little kids. And he said that Jesus blessed teen marriages and wrote extensively on this. And so he said that they should be encouraged. So one of his Mo letters, it included a cartoon with the likeness of himself and his lover Maria in bed with a prepubescent girl that was titled The Little Girl Dream. I mean,
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to stop making noises. He also wrote a book called The Devil Hates Sex, But God Loves It. In this book, he talked about children and sex, calling it beautiful and godly. And he was quoted as saying that he wanted his child to embrace sexuality, to be a sexual being as an infant and growing up. Like, help me, please. Like, I want to just burn him to death. And then you're like, you did bring up about how he was too a victim himself at one point, and it's like, yes, that's true. This stems from trauma in his past, but at some point you break free of it and you have to take responsibility for your actions,
I was going to say, well, it's one thing to have your life negatively affected by this and impacted, but he's on a whole other level.
That's for dang sure.
And I don't even know if I want to make the nature versus nurture argument, because I'm like, this piece of trash. Like, and it's just so, it's weird because he contradicts like everything the Bible really says about sex, how it's between a man and a married woman, not a married, like a married man and woman, right? Husband and wife. Nowhere does it say children sharing, blah, blah, blah. So he's just so far gone in his own head.
Oh, even his wife Maria was, I guess they all were in on it, but in one of his Mo letters, she wrote that it's pure to us. There's nothing wrong with it. So we let our kids be in on it. We let them get in on it if they want. We even play it with them because it's nice. It makes them feel good and they enjoy it. So let's all bleach our brains of that horrific quote and move on.
I'm like gonna need a ton of comfort food today. And yeah.
Well, and so, personally, I feel like it's hypocritical BS. He said that homosexuality was strictly banned, but because he was a creep, he said sexual relations between females in a threesome was allowed as long as they were not lesbians and the women still preferred men. I'm like, is this real life?
How? Yeah. That's okay. That's like dudes being against gay guys, but being like, but lesbians are cool because
Oh, yeah.
it's just the opposite.
Because you get off on it. Right.
Yeah.
It's clearly just to get his rocks off, you know? I mean, it's so clearly obvious that that's all it was that he was like, you know, to be honest with you, I get off on watching two women go at it. So, but he also had, at one point, he said something along the lines of, it's all love, so I don't know. It almost sounded to me like, I can't remember exactly what he said, but it kind of sounded like he was paving the way for men to be able to have sex with each other. And I was like, did he have sex with other men? And then he wasn't allowing other people to do it. I bet he didn't really care, to be honest, but who knows?
Honestly, though, that's kind of a pattern in these cult leaders is they don't, I don't, like Jim Jones,
Yeah.
you know? Yeah. I'm pretty sure he had sex with the members and male members too, but he said it wasn't anything, it wasn't like homosexuality. It was like God telling him that he needed to do it.
Okay. Whatever you want to tell yourself, you fucking weirdos.
Whatever, Jim.
Yeah, Jim.
You crazy bastard.
Oh, gosh. Okay. So it was around this time that the name again changed from Children of God to the Family. Again, it was an evolution of the church's ideas about sex, and so then they had to evolve their name as well. He had 4 children with multiple wives, and his favorite wife was Mama Maria, or her real name was Karen Zerby. And she'll come into play a little bit more later, but she's also the one that just wrote that disgusting thing about children having sex and molesting her own children.
Whew.
Yeah, she's a real gem. She'll come into play later, not this episode, but next week. So all members were to think of each other as family. So all adults were to be referred to as aunties and uncles. And like I just said, any adult was allowed to discipline any child as they saw fit. And there were a bunch of just real assholes that were seriously abuse kids for nonsense and to sexually molest them. I mean, it was just all going on under the umbrella, I guess, of this church's ideology, which is like, we're all family, everybody can do this, you know, you shouldn't only parent your own child. And I mean, it was just crazy. Like, one of the rules that I read that I was like, are you kidding me? Because I just think about myself. I'm like, oh my gosh, the children were expected to last the entire night without needing to use the restroom, or else that they were beaten with a fly swatter. I go to the bathroom at least twice a night. As an adult.
Yeah, I'm peeing all the time.
That would be terrible.
Especially if you're properly hydrated. Hello.
Well, they probably weren't, so maybe that worked in their favor. Okay, so by 1981, the Children of God had close to 10,000 members and 1,642 communes around the world. They claim that these communes distributed 30 million pages of cult literature each month, which is a butt ton. And Berg was decreeing that they should all move to fertile lands of the East, saying that these countries were less corrupt and easier to find souls to save. It also had the added advantage of less intrusive governments, which allowed their large communes to operate without interference, which was actually the real reason behind this, not the BS that he's trying to peddle.
So, fun fact though, some members were Rose McGowan, the actress, River, Joaquin, Rain, and Summer Phoenix were also part of the group from 72 to 78. And so, I mean, it's like Scientology. It's a lot of celebrities too, because there's more, but they're not like super well known.
Well, and you can see like the appeal probably, but obviously, you know, it was a traumatic situation to survive. And I think, anyway, well, we'll talk about that more later. So it was around this time, in 1981, that the dictates around sex evolved yet again. He began to preach the law of love, which is what he said, meaning anything that's done in love is good. So his version focused on sex, in which we already talked about, he called sharing. A new Mo letter that he sent out stated that it wasn't fair that single members should be lonely and unloved. So his solution was for married members to share their partners with the opposite sex, which I kind of already talked about, actually. But these sharing sessions were called love sessions, and they were done most of the time in full view of the children. Like, they did not go, oh, wait, there's a kid in the room.
There's just, no, I mean, and as we know, reading, you know, because we do the research, we come up, like, exposing young children to sex at such young ages, especially so openly, it just paves the way for a really messed up adult. Like, children should not be exposed to it.
Women in particular were encouraged to submit to sex if it was a way of helping someone. which is establishing this male-dominated submission equals love, rapey bullshit. Here's a quote that I feel like everybody is gonna throw their radios.
The radios, okay, on the ham AM radio.
Oh God! Wait, okay. I'll throw your device across the room. Here I go. There is no such thing as rape if we follow the true laws of nature. A woman of the Bible should submit willingly to a man and satisfy him. God created sex and a man's need for sex. He created women to serve a man's need. Okay. And then again, I'm going to continue just a little bit more. He seriously wrote a Moe letter about a little girl that was about to be raped by a group of men who then submitted willingly with a song in her heart to turn them to Jesus, like all good girls should. That's really seriously what it said. I cannot even begin to... I
have no words. I'm speechless about it.
Right. It's seriously, I mean, when am I ever speechless? I'm speechless right now because I'm like... You're telling little girls that they need to submit to rape with a song in their heart.
Yep.
I would like to slit your throat, essentially, is what I would like to do. I'm seriously so angry about that, I can hardly even move on. Okay, so members were surprised, but not horrified as they should have been. King David said that this would promote humility, unselfishness, and create a closer connection with God. I mean, it's just so manipulative. I can't.
Right.
Okay, so here we go. So here is the time that the completely jacked up concept of flirty fishing was born, which sounds really fun and exciting. But it's not.
So it comes from when the Bible describes Jesus as being a fisher for men, which I don't think this is what he meant at all. Actually, I'm pretty sure.
This is where I'm like, I don't know what to say because I personally don't even follow this at all. But I would assume that God would not be telling you to go essentially hunt down people to have sex with so that you can bring them closer to him. I just don't see that as being the case.
No. I mean, it's essentially, so it started out as essentially just like free prostitution, as long as it got members into the group. These women were just encouraged to go have sex with men and witness to them about their beliefs.
Right.
So eventually, it soon led to the further degeneration of the practice from mere flirting into loving sexually to escort servicing. So they did become prostitutes who got paid, and
but they didn't get paid.
No,
they
got paid, yeah. So, and as long as they
for the cult
witnessed on occasion to their Johns, it was seen as okay.
They seriously told these women that they were God's whores, which I'm like, good grief, dude. Are we being serious here? So there were posters with instructions on how to be a good little flirty fish that were distributed. And it's so, okay, so one image depicted a naked woman wriggling on a fucking fishing hook that read "Hookers for Jesus."
No.
Yes. It is so utterly dehumanizing. I just want to punch this piece of trash in the face so badly. I'm like, where is he buried? I think he might have been cremated. I'm like, where is he buried? Because I will go pour vomit all over his grave. I freaking cannot with this guy. Another one depicted a woman sitting at a table with a man that read, "If they fall in love with you first, before they find it's the Lord, it's just God's bait to hook them." Like, it's just so manipulative. Like, I can't think of another word to use. I'm just like, like these poor women were just so manipulated, and they're everything just twisted to the point where I'm just like, I can't even imagine what they must have felt, how conflicted they must have felt deep inside of them. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, how horrible it probably made them feel, and how, like, they probably just struggled with it so much because they're like, well, but I'm doing this for God, because they're being told that it's for him, and it's, I just cannot even.
So
this is like a lot of noises. This episode, I'm making a lot of noises.
No, it's just because it's so gross. So it went from 74 to 87 when it was abandoned. a big part because of the AIDS epidemic, and I highly doubt that David was distributing condoms to his women to protect themselves.
Nope.
And the women were expected to keep a record of their successes, aka fruits. And a statistic showed that more than 223,000 men had been fished.
Holy moly, dude.
So, yeah. And the family, the cult, they pretty much discouraged the use of birth control. So there was a lot of pregnancies that resulted in this flirty fishing. And they were termed Jesus babies.
There's nothing that says love like forcing women into prostitution and then not allowing them to prevent unwanted pregnancies. Yep.
Yeah.
Oh, somebody please. There were apparently a bunch of high-ranking officials, police, and businessmen that were part of this escort service in the overseas communities. And they did this, they said, to ensure that the local authorities wouldn't ask too many questions about the group's activities. So it was kind of a way to manipulate the local authorities so that they could get away with their large scale
prostitution ring,
debauchery, illegal, everything.
So essentially he was like one of the most successful pimps in history.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, can I tell? Okay, here's another. Oh gosh. Okay, here's another. I feel like
I want to go take a hot shower.
Who do I feel like I'm Charlie. I feel like Charlie from It's Always Sunny right now. I feel like I'm just like,
dude, with your P's and your B's.
Like, I'm gonna rise up. Okay. So some members were concerned that this escorting would set the flirty fishers up for rape and violence. Obviously, picking strangers up in a bar was an entirely different story than sharing within the cult. So Berg happily admitted that violence may happen, but women should just accept it. He said that they were like the early Christian martyrs who were raped by Roman soldiers. And like I told you that little thing about the rape earlier. Now, this mentality instilled in the men and the boys that were being raised in the cult that women were second-class citizens subservient to men. And that obviously their safety, their mental health, like any of that does not even factor in to his mind whatsoever. I cannot even begin to tell you how much I want to kill this guy. I'm serious. I'm like, he's dead. I want to kill him again. Freaking hell, dude. I'm really upset right now. I just need to take a breath. I think I need to drink some water. For real. I'm like, really? This is making me... I'm getting like ragey right now.
I don't understand the human brain in this instance. How can it be so over the top, just disgusting and foul, you know?
I don't know. I really don't. It's the most depraved crap.
Oh, gosh, yeah.
Ever. Like you said, contraception was banned. Can you even? Oh, yeah. So, he didn't allow condoms, no. I mean, he wasn't really, I don't think he was really a fan of it because, like you said, they were called Jesus babies, and that was like a happy, you know, they wanted this to happen. But at one point, he did send out a Mo letter telling members to look out for signs of common STDs like crabs and herpes because there had been a mass breakout. So cool. And then, I mean, aren't you just exposing everybody in the entire cult to this stuff? Because they're going to go back and have sex with everybody there, you know?
Right.
Sheesh. Okay. I'm so angry. I'm like getting hot right now. So help.
Yeah, I'm going to go take a very hot shower afterwards and scrub my skin off.
Okay, deep breath. So by the mid-'80s, this idiot was being investigated by authorities regarding possible child abuse and suspicion of pimping. What do you say?
Hello.
Yeah, This began rules for members that were ultra strict regarding using coded knocks when they entered a building. Anyone who was out witnessing had to call back to the commune using a secret code to gain entry back in. They were to make sure nobody was following them when they came back. They had all their mail go through secret P.O. boxes that they checked twice a month in a weird-ass military-style operation by adults in disguises.
It's so ridiculous.
I know. It's hard to believe that you don't realize what a piece of trash you are. Not the members. I mean, I'm not talking shit about the members necessarily. I'm talking shit about David Berg. But it's like, I mean, he knows he's wrong.
He has to.
But he's just justifying it by saying that, outside systemites are not as enlightened, I guess, as he is. And that's why we think it's wrong when it's not really wrong. Yeah. So children at the time were also given extra security drills. I mean, they had to go to classes so that they could be told not to talk to people, not to talk to strangers whatsoever. Don't give out any information to anybody that talks to you ever, because you might endanger the whole group, and by doing so you're putting your leader in harm's way. Oh my gosh. Though as much as I would hope that being investigated, and he knew he would stop some of this sexual deviance that he was projecting amongst his members, it actually only got more depraved from there, if that's even freaking possible. There was a commune in Greece that was led by this dude Paul Pelequin, and their role at that commune was to produce music with meaningful videos to distribute as learning tools for its members. Oh, God. And so one film was called Glorify God with Dance, and it showed naked prepubescent girls and women dancing suggestively, or as they called it, joyfully for God. I mean, we're talking, there was 8-year-old girls in this dancing naked and suggestively, because that's how they taught them to do. It was originally made as a present for Berg, but he loved it so much that he ordered copies to be distributed, along with his advice on how the girls and women could be dancing girls to the communes. So here's something that was read to all cult members, adult and children alike. They had different sessions throughout the day where they would kind of have group where they would read some of his stuff that he sent out. And it said, oh God, I feel like, is it even okay for me to read this? I feel like, am I going to be investigated for something creepy? It said, when you rub your hands on the sides of your belly and down to your crotch, it's really exciting. It really is thrilling to watch a girl caress herself. Very stimulating. Masturbating breast and bum with your hands, ! I'm like, you're an idiot on top of being a creep. That sounds stupid as hell, but it's also disgusting, So basically, he is just conditioning little kids to be sexual, be sexually active, do it with adults, and that's, what you're doing in that case is pleasing him and the Lord by association, I guess. I mean, how confusing for a little kid.
Well, and if you watch interviews with those children, it's so heartbreaking, because they are defending this man and his actions, to the point where they're just hysterical crying, saying they love him and they want to do what makes him happy. And it's just what in the heck?
Yeah, that's the good old Stockholm syndrome.
Mm-hmm.
And conditioning, just, oh, Jesus. Okay, so there was another book that was distributed called The Story of David Ito, which is actually his son. No, it's not. It's his wife, Maria's son, with a busboy at a restaurant.
Yeah, adopted son, right?
Uh-huh.
Okay.
Because his birth father didn't want anything to do with the cult, so the boy just came to the cult. So it was this book, The Story of David Ito, was about a little boy who was not much older than a toddler being fondled and kissed on the lips by grown women, and in one account told by cult survivor Natasha Tormey, who was raised in the Children of God cult in her book Born into the Children of God, which I have been reading, and holy moly, her female teacher was replaced by a man who began molesting her when she was 4 years old. He was even in charge of watching over her when she was in essentially quarantine one time when she had a terrible fever. He made the case that she shouldn't be around the other kids. So he and another man took her to this quarantine, which was very Cabin in the Woods. Is that the movie? Cabin in the Woods? Cabin Fever. Cabin Fever. Where that girl's quarantined
I hate
in that cabin.
Movie.
I know, it's gross. Well, I don't hate it, but it's gross. But yeah, so she was quarantined in this cabin, or this little shed, and he was in there with her the whole time. And it was supposedly because he was watching over her, but really he was molesting her the entire time that she had a freaking 107-degree temperature. They wouldn't allow her to go to the doctor because they said that she just needed to pray and make herself better. It really made me realize how much the cult had separated children from their biological parents in place of being raised by the community, which, kind of in theory sounds nice, community, raising a child, but that, along with the teaching being handed down from the sexual predator, only paved the way for adults to have free reign of any child they wanted with little intervention from their biological parents. And that is the most sad thing in the world. Like, this poor freaking child just being
Passed around, essentially.
by this gross, she didn't even, it was so terrible, because she said that there was this one opportunity this one morning where she had a rare moment alone with her mother, because you never got to just be with your parent by yourself, really.
Right.
She said she ran to her mom and just started bawling her eyes out, and she was too young to even know what to say to her mom about what was going on with this teacher of hers. Like, she didn't even know how to put it into words. It was just so heartbreaking. And obviously, a lot of these people went on to recover. They still have this trauma, but they've worked through it. They're awesome people. But, for some people, this literally ruined their lives. And, you can see why that's the case, obviously.
Right.
So, anyway, it was just so sad. I just could not even believe it. At this time, some of the members began to feel more and more that they were pretty uncomfortable with the way things were going as far as the teachings were concerned.
Well, what I'm confused about is, at what point in your adult life do you decide, oh yeah, I guess I am attracted to children. I think this sounds like a great idea.
I don't know, dude. It's like, I think we've kind of talked about this before. It's like, what is it about pedophilia that is something that's like, I feel like, just as maybe you might say like a bully breed in a dog, how it has like this something that's been bred into it deep down,
right,
from generation, or maybe you would not say even a bully, but like a hunting dog
or a retriever, any sort of working dog.
And yeah, dogs in general, have that primal predatory instinct. I think that, we've talked about this, like, pedophilia didn't used to be something that was seen as wrong.
Right.
And I feel like maybe because, we've only gotten more knowledgeable about the psychological effects of it as time has progressed. And maybe, I don't know, I cannot understand that, but like maybe it's something that has been embedded in some of our DNA. I don't know, because it seems so
bizarre,
so much more common than I would ever expect it to be, like you and I, we were like, what? Like, remember when we first heard Franklin cover up, we were like, could this really be real?
I know.
Like, I don't think there can't be that many people.
Because why are so many people, especially in politics, that are like so down to have sex with little boys? Yeah. I'm just like, what is this? And why is it happening? What?
Look how easily these people, by just being told that God loves sex, it's a sign of love. You're expressing love with your loved ones. Children needed to be learning this, blah, blah, blah. Some of them were so quick to be like, yes, I'm gonna have sex with that child. There were a lot of them that did not do that. At least as far as like what I've read, there was Natasha, I don't know, it says it's with a CH, but her father was one of the higher ups that would match people, and she said he claims that he never matched children, like a 12-year-old, like he never did that he waited until, I'm sure there was another arbitrary age that he felt was okay, like 14 or something, but he says he never matched children with adults. She talked to him a couple times about a book that her teacher showed her, which was that book about David Ito, and he was like, that's totally inappropriate, she should never have showed you that. So I'm sure there were some that were like, I would never touch my child that way. I would never want anyone else to touch my child that way. Mm. But at the same time, they were hardly ever around in order to stop it from happening by other people, So I don't know. It's just so strange. Like, I don't really know. I don't know what to say. I think there must be a large group of the population or sect of the population, I don't know, that has this bizarre desire for pedophilic behavior. I mean, I guess it's deeply embedded in them, and if they get encouraged in any way, it comes out. Like, I can't think of anything else, because it's horrifying to think.
Yeah, I think it's something that would require extensive scientific research.
I mean, I know that we've talked about covering it it's just like, it's a really gross topic to want to delve into, but it is really interesting to think that,
Right.
it's not, I don't know, it's interesting, but I don't mean to be like dismissive of the trauma that it causes, but there's something there that I'm not really sure how to explain.
Yeah.
Anyway, so okay. So like I said, they were starting to get uncomfortable with where the teachings were headed. And because like at one point, like I said, they were supposed to pore over the Bible for hours and hours and hours, the New Testament particularly. But as time went on, they were reading the Bible less and less. And Berg began to say that his writings had grown in importance, and they had definitely grown in volume. And members had barely enough time to digest one box of books and letters and videos that he would send out before another batch arrived. So they were like just being inundated with this crazy pants material. And he said in his Mo letters that members should focus on reading God's word today rather than those written 2,000 to 4,000 years ago, meaning his, because he was a prophet.
Right.
So, now he's completely moved on from the Bible because he is now the new Bible. And unfortunately, many of the members did believe this and did as he said. Oh, so anyone that was left to question anything, they were labeled doubters, and they were put on watch for suspected mind poisoning of other members. This obviously created an environment of fear and paranoia, which sounds like a real nightmare for me. I would be a complete nutcase at this point.
So that means like other members watching your movements closely and reporting it back.
On you.
Okay.
The children, they said that they had to. They had like certain times where they had to go report on other children. So the children were just paranoid, freaking out. They were scared. They were making up lies, and the adults would just believe every single thing they said. So you would get punished for something that was a lie even. I mean, how messed up would that make you?
Right.
I wouldn't know how to deal with this. So at sharing sessions, meaning when women were set up to have sex with other men, they were often asked to reveal if their husbands were having doubts or struggling with quote-unquote demons. And they were told that revealing these doubts would help their partners overcome them. But what it really did was serve to break down trust between couples, and it broke up a butt ton of marriages. So,
right.
Yeah. They can't get as far as they need, apparently, letting people be happy with one partner. So with Berg under investigation and his teachings reaching a whole new grotesque level of evil, things begin to go slightly awry for him in the cult. And this is where we will end today.
Yeah, it's a two-parter.
It's a definite two-parter. When we start back up next week, we'll explore the evolution of Children of God, or the family, or whatever the hell this dumb loser wants to call it at the time. His death, what happens after he dies, and the tragic legacy of the cult. And we're also, hopefully, going to talk to a woman who was raised in the cult about her experiences there and how she has survived to be the strong, badass woman that she is today.
I'm going to try not to cry.
I know. I'm like, oh, gosh. This is serious. I mean, it's like one of those things where, and this is still a cult today. Like, they still exist.
This is what, blows my mind is like, they're still, and they could say, hey, we don't do the flirty fishing, we don't do the child stuff anymore, but then why continue why continue the cult? I don't get it.
Exactly. No, yeah.
It should just be disbanded.
Yeah. Change it all together. Right. Yeah. I mean, oh God. So I guess I didn't realize how absolutely infuriated I was going to become as we recorded this, but I should have known. It's one of the most disgusting tales that I've read in my entire life, I think. I know that there might be some people out there that are like thinking that we're maybe sensationalizing it or something, but
I don't want to ever, I'm not trying to exploit anyone or anything. It's just,
I think it needs to be exposed.
I mean, the psychology behind cults, is crazy.
And, I feel like when people do this type of utter just I don't know how to even word it, but I mean, this is horrible, horrible, horrible. This is some serious shit that people had to live through. Children were raised in this, and it needs to be exposed for what it is. And so I'm not trying to sensationalize anything or exploit anybody. I just want the truth to be known about these things. And you know what?
Right.
Like we've said before, when we did Franklin, it was like, I know this sucks. I know it sucks to hear about, but at the same time, like, you need to know this kind of stuff goes on in the world. You need to be prepared and ready. It's happening. Like, let's not just live in a little oblivion. So, yeah, I'm totally not trying to do anything but expose them for just how evil they really were at the core of this terrible cult. So that's the end for today.
Well, now that that's over and done with, yeah, I'm going to go cry in my shower.
Don't go cry in your shower. Well, before we log off, I would like to tell everybody to please go follow us on Instagram at Creep It Real Pod. We have our Facebook group that is the Creep It Real Podcast Hangout. We have a post up on Instagram that says the names of it, but I don't think it has a link. So regardless, yeah, go, just type in Creep It Real Podcast Hangout in your search bar on Facebook, and you can join the group, follow the pod on Facebook, donate to our PayPal at paypal.me/creepitrealpod.
Don't forget that our last Creeping Up episode just came out, and that is the last one.
Yeah, it's it for now. The next one that would come out will be next week, and it will be Patreon only. Oh, also, I'd like to shout out to
Forensics and Flowers?
So we got some new artwork.
It is sick.
It is so amazing, and I cannot wait to show you. We're going to get our shirts made with that artwork, and I'm telling you right now, we're both like, should we get this tattooed on us?
I know. It's so good. I love it.
It is. Really. And I did want to say a shout out to Fear and Fame podcast.
Oh, right. Those two cuties.
Those are very cute little ladies. Anyway, so thank you so much, everybody, for listening. Go and rate and review the podcast with positive effing reviews. I know if you're listening right now, you would do such a thing.
Well, you can't just listen to like half of the first episode and
out there.
Be like, well, this is trash. Hello, we started from scratch. Okay, thanks. Like, literally.
Literally, I know if my husband hears me say this right now, he's going to die. Literally, we got a 2-star review and super negative feedback this week from someone who said openly that they listened to 5 minutes of the very first episode.
Don't be that person.
How is that logical to anyone out there? Tell me, please. So that said, I know that if you're listening to this point right now, that you love us. And if you could just take a little bit of time to go on iTunes, give us 5 stars. And if you feel so inclined, a couple words of positivity would be great. Because it really, really, really makes a big difference to us as far as the iTunes rigmarole goes and how they share us and distribute us to people. So go forth, my babies, and please do such a thing. I would really appreciate it. It would be great. Yeah. Shy, anything you want to say?
Nope, I'm good.
You're like, you talked your ass off, so...
No, it's okay.
Okay, well, we love ya. You're the best. I'm about to go eat some food.
Oh, God, yeah.
Some
food.
Some dressing and gravy and stuff like that. And rolls. I'm like, carbs and carbs and carbs, please.
Oh, you know what my favorite thing to do with Thanksgiving type food?
What?
I like to take a dinner roll. I like to take some dark meat turkey.
Of course.
Put a little butter in there. Stuff it with stuffing.
Yes.
Turkey gravy, and make like sandwiches.
Oh, yes.
And then you get that salty, and then you add a little bit of cranberry for the sweet.
Oh, yeah.
Oh.
Now, we don't have cran. We didn't do cran this year. We're doing beets, so it's not quite the same. Peter's like, it's sweet. It's like and I'm like,
no.
I might have to go buy some crayons for the leftover sandwiches that I make. But
yeah. Turkey cranberry sandwiches.
Oh yeah. I mean, beets are delicious, but roasted beets with vinegar, I really love them. But it's not that little sweetness that I'm looking for. So anyway, okay. we'll see you next week, guys, with this conclusion of Children of God.
Have a safe, fun week ahead of y'all.
And I hope you are okay. If you're not, after hearing this disgusting crap, let us know. I can help you get down off that ledge of depression, because it might happen. It's really depressing. But anyway, okay, we'll see ya. Creep it real, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.